Shall we start, ma'am?
Yes, please. Let's start.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, sure, ma'am. Very good afternoon and Happy New Year to one and all gathered online. This is Dr. Gladys Jennifer, Associate Professor, School of Public Health, SRM, welcoming the Director, Madam, Dean SPH, faculty, students, and friends for our Public Health Lecture Series 4. By the grace and blessings of God Almighty and guidance of Professor Batma Venkat ma'am, we started with the national speakers for the past 3 lectures. And today with international speaker, Professor Gerard Bodekar sir. Our beloved Pro VC MHS, Dr. Lieutenant Colonel A. Ravikumar sir, is not able to join us due to the National Medical Council meeting today. However, he sent us best wishes for the meeting and thanks for Professor Bodekar sir. When we contacted yesterday, Dr. Maithili Madam agreed to deliver the welcome address in her busy schedule. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our respected Madam Dr. T. Maithili Ma'am, Director of Student Affairs in SRM University. Madam has done her PhD in Soft Skill for Engineers, Masters in English, Education, Management, and PG Diploma course in Guidance and Counseling. She has 24 years of experience in the academic field with extensive experience in creating training modules that shape the career path of students. She initiated the setting up of career development centers in SRM University that train students for placements way back in 2006. Madam led the team in the Government of India initiative to train 250 headmasters of government schools of Tamil Nadu in SRM University. Training Japanese nationals in communicative English for the last 14 years, she has craved a niche in that space. Currently, as a Director of Student Affairs, she is always on the lookout to make the stay of students in the university more meaningful. Madam's believes that a perfect balance between academics and other activities is what will see one as a successful person in the long run, and thus she creates a scope for the students to pursue their passion and hobbies through the various clubs and sports activities. Her professional membership include life member in Indian Association of Applied Psychologists and the Indian Science Congress Association. In February 2020, the Higher Education Digest selected Dr. Maithili Madam as one of the 10 most influential women leaders in Indian education. Thank you, ma'am, for joining with us. I request you to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that warm introduction. A very good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of SRM Institute of Science and Technology, I deem it a great pleasure to welcome you all for the Public Health Lecture Series initiated by the School of Public Health under the University Wellness Program. By introducing the University Wellness Program, the School of Public Health has brought about a better awareness about the importance of wellness and well-being among all university stakeholders. Their approach combines research and driven data action. The students of all the departments of the university are encouraged to be part of the University Wellness Program to bring about a positive change in the university. From the Directorate of Student Affairs, we feel this is a very, very important initiative, and we extend full support to the School of Public Health in this initiative of theirs. Under the banner of University Wellness Program, the School of Public Health has also launched the Public Health Lecture Series, a much needed effort to rope in experts and eminent speakers, both from India and abroad, to share their experiences and inspire the next generation public health professionals. The purpose of the Public Health Lecture Series is to expose the students and faculty to contemporary and cutting-edge research and other work pertinent to public health, and to connect with experts and open up collaborative possibilities. I'm truly elated to welcome today's eminent speaker, Professor Gerard Bodecker. The topic of his lecture is Wellness, a Central Priority in Public Health. I'm hoping we learn more about the processes to achieve wellness, particularly in the university context. Professor Bodecker is well accomplished and an eminent wellness expert in the global scenario. He advises academicians and industry alike on integrative medicine and wellness. He has taught in medical sciences at Oxford University for over 2 decades, is adjunct professor of epidemiology at Columbia University, and works with the private sector, governments, and UN, advising on culturally themed wellness strategies. Professor Bodecker's talks are popular on YouTube, and he has published many books on wellness and traditional medicine. Professor Bodecker chairs the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, USA. Dr. Padma Venkat, Dean SPH, tells me that she has known Dr. Bodecker for over 25 years, and he's also on the advisory board of the School of Public Health. Thanks, Padma, for connecting us with such an eminent personality. Thank you, Professor Bodecker, for accepting our invitation to address our students and faculty. Look forward to hearing your lecture on wellness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your support for our UWP program and SPH, ma'am. So this is a time to introduce our beloved speaker, Dr. Professor Gerard Bodecker, sir. I'm truly elated to welcome Professor Gerard Bodecker, a Harvard-trained public health academic. He advises on integrative medicine and wellness. He has taught in medical sciences at Oxford University for past 2 decades as an adjunct professor of epidemiology at Columbia University. Sir works with the private sector, governments, and UN organizations. Sir advising on culturally themed wellness strategies. Sir has worked with World Bank, WHO, UNDP, UN Environment Program, and UN Food and Agriculture Organizations. And he served as an advisor to CNN and National Geographic magazine. Professor Bodecker, sir, has specialized in Asian traditions of medicine and healthy lifestyles. He is chair of an Ayush advisory group to the new chair in Ayurveda at the University of Western Sydney, Australia. Sir is a fellow of an International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Sir serves on the editorial boards of 4 international journals in the field of traditional and complementary medicine and published many books. Sir chairs the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, USA. Thank you, Dr. Bodecker, sir, for accepting our invitation to address our students and faculty. I'm sure that it will be useful to us to take the University Wellness Program agenda forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jennifer, and thank you, Dr. Maiti Lee, and my special thanks to Dean Padma Venkat for inviting me to speak with you all. Dr. Venkat and I have actually known each other for almost 30 years. We met at Oxford University in 1993 when Dr. Venkat was doing a postdoc at Cambridge University at the time. So this is a long association, and I'm happy that it's continuing in this very productive way. I'll share my screen with you now. And there we go. And I'll just put that on full screen. And I'll work through the presentation page by page. So as you see, the title is Wellness, a Central Priority in Public Health. Now, this has not been the case until discussion of it right now, and I want to tell you why we should be thinking of wellness as a central priority in public health. So I'm going to be speaking more about the mental health, mental wellness side of things, but physical health and prevention of non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, rheumatism, cancer, and so on, is also part of the wellness equation. But as Dr. Maite Lee and Dr. Jennifer mentioned, I do chair the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, so I'll drill into this in a little bit of detail. So you've all heard of mental health, but what is mental wellness? Well, it's a resource for a start. It's an internal resource through which we think, feel, and connect and function. It's an active process that helps us to build resilience, to grow, and to flourish. It's got several dimensions, as you see: thinking, connecting socially, feeling emotionally, functioning psychologically. And it's a process that we must engage in proactively. It's not a static state of being. This is very important. So mental wellness, as with all aspects of mental and physical wellness, these are things that require active and proactive engagement. This is from the Global Wellness Institute, a dual continuum model of mental wellness and mental illness. If you look at the horizontal axis in purple, you can see the old paradigm. Mental illness, high mental illness on the left, low or no mental illness on the right. And that's been the paradigm for the past century or more. If you look at the vertical axis, the sort of green color there, turquoisey color, this is the mental wellness continuum. This is where we're talking about flourishing, happiness, life satisfaction, strong personal relationships, personal growth, peak performance. And the unhappy end of that spectrum is languishing, which is sadness and worry, stress and anxiety, loneliness, being disengaged or being debilitated. So how do we get to mental wellness, or to all wellness actually? Because anything that we do for physical wellness will lead us to mental wellness. Anything we do for mental wellness will lead us to physical wellness. So you see we have mental wellness on the left, physical wellness on the right, and you can see some of the internal processes are learning and discovery, creating, self-help, cognitive enhancement, meditation, spirituality, gratitude, compassion. And on the physical side, natural movement, which can include yoga, running, walking, fitness and exercise, sports and active recreation, diet and nutrition, very important. Drugs means herbal and traditional drugs and supplements. Rest, of course, sleep, mind-body practices, and so on. And then meaning, it's extremely important. We'll come to that towards the end of this presentation. Meaning and a sense of purpose, involving connection with family and friends, nature, animals, volunteering and civic engagement, which is the sort of public expression of the other side of altruism, gratitude, and compassion. So on this point of mental health and wellness, the World Health Organization has now stated that mental health represents a second pandemic accompanying COVID. COVID's challenged the world in so many ways, and mental health is high on the list of areas of our lives that have been impacted. The World Health Organization has declared mental health to be a parallel pandemic to COVID-19. Here's some research from The Lancet just from last April. Over 250,000 patients were followed, people who had had COVID, and the estimated incidence of a neurological or psychiatric diagnosis in the following 6 months was a third, more than a third. of this 250,000, 236,379 patients, more than a third of them had a neurological or psychiatric condition during the subsequent 6 months. They found that risks were greatest in, but not limited to, people who had had severe COVID. Another study in 2020, less than 2 years ago, found that depression was more than threefold higher during COVID than before. And they found that the factors influencing depression were lower income. This is an American study, having less than $5,000 in saving, so financial risk, having exposure to more stresses, having exposure to more stresses such as loss of a relative, loss of employment. These are associated with a greater risk of depression during COVID. So mental health and COVID are unfortunately bedfellows. They are hand in hand. The term long COVID, you've all heard that, is commonly used to describe signs and symptoms that continue or develop after acute COVID. So people may be discharged, there may be no indication on the tests that they are positive, but they continue to have symptoms afterwards. There is no treatment, there is no rehab guidance, and long COVID affects people's ability to resume normal life and their capacity to work. This has an effect on society from increased healthcare burden and economic productivity losses, and this is substantial. And this is just a few months ago in the Lancet in August. The Asian Development Bank also, so I'm sharing with you some of the voices of authority in this field, just showing that already this is being recognized by Lancet, by Journal of the American Medical Association, by the Asian Development Bank. Wellness and mental health are being recognized as major current priorities in public health. So the Asian Development Bank has pointed out that the pandemic has increased the risk of illness for people with underlying health conditions, including obesity, asthma, and diabetes, as well as for the elderly. Obviously, then, COVID becomes a major public health risk for special populations. And then on the issue of fear, uncertainty, economic hardship, resulting in stress and anxiety, that's the mental health dimension. Across the board, more than a third of people in China, almost a half in the United States, are experiencing some level of mental distress associated with the pandemic. What we see is that the existing risk factors for poor health, such as heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, air pollution, poor environmental conditions, really in Asia serve as an encouragement for people to exercise more, eat better, and make healthier life choices. Asia's population is also aging. People are living longer, and older populations are vulnerable to chronic diseases and to loneliness and mental health issues. So this is where wellness really comes in. You've seen that wellness is a proactive process. It requires engagement, engaging with life choices that enhance quality of life and improve health and longevity. So the Asian Development Bank has pointed out, in their words, wellness is pro-poor. It contributes to sustainable development. Wellness, or the active pursuit of well-being, aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly the third goal, which is ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. A focus on wellness promises to bring a more balanced and holistic view of development than does measuring progress simply as increased income per capita. Now, that is an extremely important statement from an investment bank, a development bank, and Asia's development bank. Let's read it again. A focus on wellness promises to bring a more balanced and holistic view of development. This is not a health statement. This is a statement of development economics than does measuring progress simply as increased income per capita. This is a proposal for a new metric in assessing national, regional, and international development. And one of the things that has been highlighted that I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, highlighted by Professor Saxena at the Harvard School of Public Health, he's asking the question, how do we make our society realize that mental well-being is as important as physical well-being? Professor Saxena says, this challenge is only going to become more urgent as we continue to face the stresses of COVID-19, racial disparities, that's clearly critical for America, and climate change. So society should realize that mental well-being is as important as physical well-being. In Asia, there have been rising problems from poor mental health, and this is the second largest contributor to years lost to disability. Across Asia, a growing percentage of the adult population experiences a diagnosable mental illness in any given year. In China, in India, Japan, Korea, Thailand, and Malaysia, prevalence rates of mental illness have increased. Matching that is the reality of very low numbers of mental health professionals. You can see India has less than, 0.3 psychiatrists for every 100,000 population. Pakistan has the same. Indonesia has the same. China has about 1.5 psychiatrists for every 100,000 people. And so clearly, we have to conclude from this that mental wellness in Asia cannot be planned around mental health professionals. There just aren't enough. We have to look at self-care, community support, peer motivation, and so on. Here are the problems in Asia Pacific that World Health Organization and OECD have identified. You can see across the region depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, suicidal behavior, substance abuse, all around 20%. And as I said, mental health professionals are not going to be the ones who create mental wellness in society. There aren't enough of them, and there will never be enough of them. So what does influence the development of well-being in society? Number one is social support. So that means we support one another, we support within families, we support within communities, we support within networks, in friendship groups, and so on. Number two is the freedom to make life choices, extremely important for well-being. Number three is it's not all about myself. There's generosity, helping others, giving, volunteering. And number four is the absence of corruption in government and business. And interestingly, research done by the World Happiness Institute, a UN-affiliated body, has found that when a government is corrupt, no matter how well off and healthy the people are, they're not happy. Corruption in government leads to national unhappiness, government and business. My colleagues and I in the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute have produced this volume, Mental Wellness, Pathways, Evidence and Horizons, which you can download as a free PDF from the Mental Wellness Initiative site within the Global Wellness Institute. I'd like to share with you some of the approaches that we have identified here as having evidence to support their effectiveness in creating mental wellness. Meditation, of course, is extremely important. It's like an exercise for our brains. Meditation has been shown to assist in mental health maintenance, improving memory, empathy, and a sense of self. Research in the Harvard Medical School at Massachusetts General Hospital found that meditating regularly for only 8 weeks actually significantly changed the brain's gray matter, which is a major part, as you know, of the central nervous system associated with processing information, as well as providing nutrients and energy to neurons. The most studied meditation technique is Transcendental Meditation, which has been studied since 1970 in published research. And in the early research, it was found that this meditation technique, which I actually have been practicing myself every day since 1974, quite a long time, shows distinct EEG changes during meditation, characteristic of a state of restful alertness. Now, this meditative EEG pattern is distinct from sleep or normal resting. It's not just sitting there having a 10-minute power nap or 20-minute power nap. It's different. There is alertness, as you see in the first point, and restfulness together. People who meditate regularly show reduced anxiety, depression, and hostility. And here you can see a brain map. On the left, this EEG map, you can see it's diffuse, pale blue during ordinary rest, and during transcendental meditation, slow alpha frequency power in the frontal cortex of the brain increases. That's also the problem-solving area of the brain. It's also the higher reasoning, moral reasoning, creativity center of the brain. At the same time, on the chart on the left, you can see, it's a little indistinct, but on the left red bar, systolic blood pressure, and on the right, diastolic blood pressure, both through meta-analytic studies have been found to decrease with this meditation technique. So we're talking about self-managed wellness. Also in rest, there's the importance of good sleep. There is a close relationship between sleep and mental health, and many people who experience mental health problems also experience sleep problems, and vice versa. So there is, with good sleep, mental and emotional resilience. Chronic sleep disruption sets the stage for negative thinking and emotional vulnerability. Sleep can be helped through regular exercise and earlier in the day exercising as well. And exercise can also reduce the symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea during sleep, which has an effect on energy and brain functioning. Sorry, that's a little obscured, that one. So cognitive activities also are important. Reading, keeping the brain active throughout the lifespan. And this really underscores a point that when we're talking about wellness, we are talking about across the lifespan. So early childhood, and you'll see if you care to have a look at our report, we address the whole issue of early childhood and neuroplasticity, that the brain can rewire and refire according to some of these pathways. Keeping the brain active is associated with a lower risk of dementia. Interestingly, prayer, I'm sorry that has obscured it, but we'll get to yoga shortly, but you'll be familiar with the movement in Islamic prayer, and both the spiritual, the meditational and physical movements have been found to improve equilibrium, balance, joint flexibility, as well as maintain lower limb performance. And with older adults, falling is associated with loss of balance. So this prayer as well has been found to enhance mental and physical wellness. So that's some mental and physical approaches. Let's look at nutritional pathways and mental wellness. First of all, if you don't know this term, the gut-brain axis, you should. This is something that is really important in wellness research, in brain research right now. And it's been found that the microbiota in the gut and brain activity are strongly linked. There is a route of communication called the gut-brain axis, and it involves the vagus nerve, activation of the enteric nervous system, altered barrier function, hormone secretion, production of metabolites. The gut-brain axis is really, really important. We used to think only of the blood-brain barrier, that the brain was protected from anything outside of itself, but now we know that there's an axis, and what happens in the brain influences the gut, but also what happens in the gut influences the brain. Now, the human brain uses about 20% of all of the body's energy. It operates at a very high metabolic rate, and it's reliant on amino acids, fats, vitamins, minerals, and trace elements. So dietary habits modulate the functioning of the immune system, and it turns out the brain has its own discrete little immune system. So the health of the body influences the health of the brain and of the immune system. This moderates the risk for depression. And interestingly, this is very interesting, the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research has really opened this field up with a pioneering article in Lancet a few years ago, and they said a traditional whole food, traditional, not fast food, not cosmopolitan, not global, but from your tradition, in your case, the traditions of India, a whole food diet consisting of higher intakes of food such as vegetables, fruits, seafood, whole grains, lean meat, and also not much meat, nuts and legumes, and avoidance of processed foods is more likely to provide the nutrients that afford resiliency against the pathogenesis of mental disorders. What they're basically saying is, don't ask a patient, if you're a doctor, don't ask a patient, what is your mental health condition? Ask them, what is your diet? Get them onto this kind of diet, have them come back a month later or 2 months later, and then assess their mental health condition, because with these foundational contributions, their mental health will change and improve. So here we can see that there's evidence that some specific nutritional supplements can improve symptoms of depression, such as omega-3, also reducing attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, an amino acid, and acetylcysteine was useful in treating mood disorders and schizophrenia, folate supplements for depression and schizophrenia, and omega-3 also for schizophrenia. Also extremely important information. So proper micronutrients are required for mental well-being and wellness. What we see across Asia is changes in dietary intake. There's been a major economic and demographic transition, and people are eating across Asia more meat, more milk, more animal products. India and Malaysia, interestingly, are the two countries in Asia which have moved furthest from a traditional diet towards an international diet. So it means you're all eating more fast food. You're all eating more pizza and pasta, fried chicken, that sort of thing. And this has an epidemiological impact on health. Another thing that is happening is that people are drinking sugary drinks. Research by Professor Elisa Appel and her colleagues found that the telomeres, telomeres are protective caps on the DNA. They're epigenetic material, and the length of a telomere is predictive of the length of your life. And what they found was consuming 20 ounces of soda every day is associated with around 4.6 years of additional biological aging as measured by telomere length. So sugar consumption not only strains the body's metabolic control of sugars, but increases cellular aging of tissues. So you basically, by drinking a soda every day, are knocking 4.5 years off your life. You hear a lot in the media about the Mediterranean diet. Now, in Asia, I always find that a very offensive focus. It's a very Eurocentric point of view. Basically, 76% of the world's population, more than 3/4, is not Western. The Mediterranean diet is a Western diet. So how is it that a Western diet is going to be best for the whole world? How is it that 3/4 of the world's population have got it wrong for so many centuries and millennia and missed out on the all-important Mediterranean diet? Well, it's a fiction, it's rubbish. And research by two brothers, Doctors Wilcox, has compared the Japanese Okinawan diet and the Mediterranean diet, and they have found it's not the Mediterranean diet that's important, it's the ingredients that are important, the components. This includes high intake of unrefined carbohydrates, moderate protein intake, which we saw earlier, a healthy fat profile, so higher in mono and polyunsaturated fats and lower in saturated fats, rich in omega-3, which we get from fish, but have to ask the question, where do fish get their omega-3 from? Do you know the answer to that? It's seaweed. So you don't have to eat fish or extractive fish liver for omega-3. Seaweed is good enough, and the Japanese have discovered that. So a low glycemic load in the diet, less inflammation and oxidative stress, and potential modulation of aging-related biological pathways. Lower caloric density of plant-rich diets result in lower caloric intake, and this results in higher intake of phytonutrients and antioxidants. The Mediterranean diet is a good diet, but it's a Western diet, and it's studied on Westerners, by Westerners, and wrongly recommended for more than 3/4 of the world's population. That is not Western. And this is a real challenge for everybody in India to study local dietary traditions and see how these can enhance physical and mental well-being. One of the things that we should focus on in this is the fact that Asian diets use medicinal herbs. The Mediterranean diet uses some herbs, basil and thyme and oregano and so on, parsley, but these are not potent medicines the way that turmeric is, for instance, in Indian diets. In Japan, they have umeboshi plums and reishi mushrooms. China, goji berries, which have a very high immunomodulatory effect, licorice, and so on. Malaysia has a herbal salad. You see ingredients in the picture there. And so we need to understand that it's not just about the food components, it's about the medicines that actually the spices and herbs contain. Nutrition has also been an important factor in the time of COVID. Interestingly, people are more conscious of their nutrition. And in the US, you see, by the summer of 2020, only 6 months ago, plant-based food sales had more than doubled. And researchers looking at these trends are predicting that within a year, there'll be almost a doubling in the number of vegans in America. What multiple studies have confirmed is that there is a relationship between unhealthy dietary patterns and poorer mental health in children and adolescents. So a habitually poor diet, so increased consumption of Western processed foods, is associated with a greater likelihood of risk for depression and anxiety. And what do kids love? They love fried chicken, they love burgers, they love pizza, they love pasta. But the research shows there is a greater risk for depression and anxiety associated with these foods. At the same time, there is a consistent trend showing a relationship between good quality diet that we've just been looking at and better mental health. So COVID is very much the time to be eating well, to feel well. Also, new research just published in recent weeks from Harvard Medical School has found that a diet based around healthy, plant-based foods is associated with a lower risk of contracting COVID-19 and of having severe disease. So we looked at mental and nutritional approaches to mental wellness and well-being. And now we'll look at some of the physical approaches. One of the things is just being in nature, from where our species comes. So many of us live in cities now that we forget about nature, but scientists have long known that sunlight can ease depression. And also a walk in the country has been found in British research to reduce depression in almost 3/4 of people suffering from depression. As little as 5 minutes in a natural setting, whether walking in a park or gardening in the backyard, has been found to improve mood, self-esteem, and motivation. And the Japanese have developed what they call Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing or taking in the atmosphere of the forest. They have found that elements of the natural environment, such as the smell of the forest, the sound of running water, the sound of birds, the scenery of the forest, can provide relaxation and reduce stress. And this has been demonstrated by lower levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, a lower pulse rate, and lower blood pressure. So being in nature, connecting with nature, is extremely important. Exercise is critically important. We all know that, for physical health, but also for mental health. Active people are less depressed than inactive people. People who were active and stopped being active tend to be more depressed than those who maintain or initiate exercise. And yoga is good for our health throughout the lifespan, but particularly for older people. I'm sorry, this seems to be on automatic pilot here, and it's flicking the slides on ahead of me, so I just have to keep on rolling it back. But yoga has been found to improve mental and physical wellness in people over 60. Now, this is the most vulnerable group for COVID, so we should be recommending yoga for older people at this time. And then there's something called laughter yoga. If you don't know about it, Google it after the talk. It's basically where someone leads it just by going, ha, 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 and then you're next to me and you go, ha, 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 and someone else goes, and then eventually it just becomes laughter. There isn't a joke, so you don't even have to be fully in possession of your faculties. It can work for people with dementia. And it's just the physiology of laughter, not the content, not the meaning, the physiology of laughter and the social context of laughter that is associated with reduced blood pressure, reduced negative moods, and improved positive mood and happiness. Another form of exercise that's very important is dance. Now, there's been research going back almost 20 years now showing that dance is actually the only physical activity associated with a lower risk of dementia. And the interesting thing about that is that dance seems to activate, unlike other forms of exercise, it seems to activate the meaning areas of the brain, not only the motor areas of the brain. And if you look at our species, historically people have danced to communicate with the ancestors, danced to communicate with the weather gods, danced to communicate with the animal spirits. We're coming to hunt, please give us some food today. So dance has been a form of communication. So when we dance, we actually are activating the communication parts of our brain. When we are jogging, when we're on a rowing machine, when we're perhaps lifting weights, we're not communicating. It's the physical area of our brain. And that's why dance seems to be effective in reducing the risk of dementia. It's also been found to reduce Parkinson's disease. There's a big movement now called Dance for PD, started in New York. As you see, people who are involved in this, and they may not do much dancing, they may just stand and move a little bit and then move a little more, but there's a 10% improvement in overall movement, more than 25% improvement in walking or gait, and almost a 20% improvement in reduced tremor in Parkinson's disease. People who are part of this Dance for PD report an improved quality of life, feeling better, better sense of companionship, general health has improved, feeling less helpless. This is now sweeping across the West and is a very effective physical and mental health intervention for Parkinson's disease. Tai Chi, which you know comes from China, is a very effective means of preventing falling in the elderly. And it's now being recommended by both the American and the British geriatric and gerontological societies as a means of preventing falling in the elderly. And of course, we know once an old person falls, if they break a hip or a wrist when they put their hand out to break the fall, then they have surgery, and all the research shows their health goes downhill very fast. Falling is a risk factor for early death in the elderly. Massage is very important. It's so deep in India's traditions. Ayurveda has very rich massage traditions. And as you see there, massage can reduce anxiety, blood pressure, and heart rate, and also depression. So MT is massage therapy, is as effective in anxiety and depression as a course of psychotherapy. Pretty interesting and important to know, isn't it? So when we're saying that there aren't enough mental health professionals, there are plenty of massage therapists in India. This is what I mentioned earlier about a sense of purpose. The Japanese call it Ikigai. Ikigai. It's basically saying that we have to have meaning to our lives. It's in the top corner, you see, that's a picture of a book. It's well worth reading, Ikigai, Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. Japan now has more than 67,000 people who are over 100 years of age. You imagine that, 67,000 people over 100. So Japan has realized that they've got a choice. They either have a healthy older population or a sick, dependent, and hugely costly older population. So they have now mainstreamed Ikigai, concept of meaning and purpose in life, across every area of government, and they have a policy of living the 100-year life. That means living the 100-year life starts with conception, a healthy pregnancy. It starts in early childhood. It is there in preschool. It's there in primary school, in adolescence, in college, in the workplace, in retirement. Every slice of the age span is addressed in this living the 100-year life policy to create and promote wellness. This is wellness policy. Japan is taking a lead position in this. And it turns out that the keys to a long and healthy life that is well lived are quite simple. They are healthy nutrition according to culture, regular activity and movement, ideally with other people, managing stress and getting good rest, sleep, meditation, social connectivity, meaningful friendships and family relationships, and a sense of purpose, Ikigai. The results from this are wellness, happiness, connectedness, purpose, resilience, and longevity. This has resulted in a new accounting. The Japanese are doing it. I've shared that with you. Now New Zealand is taking a lead in this, and they have presented, since 2019, an annual well-being budget to assess the long-term impact of policy on the quality of people's lives. So they are going beyond economic and fiscal policy, exactly what the Asian Development Bank was saying in that quote we read at the beginning, that we have to go beyond fiscal and economic accounting and look at quality of life and well-being. This is policy. This is a new accounting. Prime Minister of New Zealand has said that they need a shift beyond short-term cycles and for seeing politics towards seeing politics through a lens of kindness, empathy, and well-being. Now that is a very new approach in policy and public health policy. That is why it's so central in public health policy. And so we'll give the last word to the Asian Development Bank, because banks are very conservative, as you know. And for Asia's Regional Development Bank to be speaking about wellness, let's hear what they've got to say. Wellness is a large and growing part of the Asian economy. Even before COVID-19, Asians were investing in wellness as incomes rose. Somehow my screen has gone there. No. So that was my last slide anyway. I don't know why that disappeared. But it's basically saying wellness is present in Asia. Asia has its own deep wellness traditions. You've seen yoga, traditional diet, meditation, massage, etc. Nature retreats, you know, retreating to an ashram in the Himalayas is part of India's tradition. So basically, what we began with, wellness as a central priority for public health, is critically important in the time of COVID, as we've seen, and needs to be brought in as part of the calculus of national planning, of economic planning and fiscal planning, looking at the impact of all of these strategies on the quality of life of the citizens. And self-care and social connectedness are keys to this. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the elaborate topic on wellness. I request Dean ma'am to give some comments. After that, students or the participants can ask the questions through the chat box.
Thanks so much for that wonderful lecture, Jerry. It's a very, very difficult topic, wellness. We all know the importance of it, but to put it across to students especially, and to highlight why wellness is important and why mental wellness is important, and also to indicate some of the approaches that can be taken by us. I think that was very, very wonderful to see that we could link it all together. And we were all sort of internally nodding, saying, yes, this is true. And when we saw New Zealand, adopting a new accounting kind of a strategy, we were wondering when it will be that India will be following suit. It is going to be a big challenge in terms of where the world is going with climate change. We are talking about sustainable development goals. We're talking about wellness and mental wellness and so on. I think you're right saying that public health, we have to be focusing more on wellness. And I'm sure this is going to be an opportunity for all the public health professionals in the coming years to take the leadership and to create opportunities in these areas, whether it is policy development or it is service oriented. I think there is immense opportunities coming our way for everybody, including people who are working on the environmental health and so on. So I think it gives us a holistic idea about how public health should be treated. And one very important reminder to me personally was that during COVID times, it was public health was more about self-care. And what you talked about is also empowering self-care. Am I right in saying that, Jerry?
Absolutely right, Padma. As we said, there just aren't enough mental health professionals to go around. There never will be. And the answer is not to depend on other people, but
Right.
to depend on ourselves by drawing on established pathways, which we can find on YouTube, on Twitter, on so many sources. And we can also find, from established teachers within our tradition. Yes.
So, yeah, so that was wonderful. And also, I wanted to ask you about this Asian Development Bank talking about wellness and wellness-based economies. I think that is going to be revolutionizing the way the governments start thinking about it. And I'm also aware that you had done a book for them on wellness. I wanted to
Yes.
know whether it's published and whether you can share that information if it's published on the chat
Yes.
box so that the students
Yeah.
can also look at
I'll
it.
do it now. It's called Wellness for a Healthy Asia. Asian Development Bank. It's a free download.
Okay.
So I encourage everyone to get that. It's an extremely important reference. I can't overstate the significance of a development bank putting this out as a regional position, a directional paper.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And thanks to you, I think it has taken,
Well,
I'm sure it's taken
and my
over.
colleagues, I was involved in co-editing and co-authoring that
Right.
with economists from the Asian Development Bank and the Global Wellness Institute. And it was
Right.
only published in November. So it's only 8 weeks old.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press. Get your copy now.
Right. Okay. Okay. So thanks very much for it. And I think that many of these aspects of wellness and the approaches we can use in the university wellness program. As you may be aware that we launched this university wellness program 2 years back. This was in the same year that we had the advisory board meeting as well. And it was to, first of all, look at wellness within the university and look at all the wellness related issues which a typical university will face, right from diet to mental well-being to physical activity and the stakeholders who are there and so on. So we have a miniature of the world situation in a university. That's where we thought it would be good for the students to work on university wellness. So they get credit for working on that as well. So it's integrated into their curriculum. So yes, and these approaches and awareness about how economics and the way you look at economics is important, where we don't budget for wellness. So you mentioned about wellness budget. I think that's a very good terminology to make us or remind us about how important it is to budget for wellness.
The development banks are getting behind it. National governments in Japan and New Zealand are getting behind it. This is a trend. It's happening in front of our eyes now.
Is that a terminology that you had introduced or somebody else had introduced?
I don't want to claim authorship for any particular concepts. You know, these are current cutting edge concepts that we want to see mainstreamed very quickly because it's very necessary.
Right. Okay. So thanks very much from me. And I'm sure the students and faculty have questions. Probably you can help by taking a few of them, if you don't mind.
Padma, if I could just ask also, I did share with, I think, yourself and certainly Dr. Jennifer, a chapter that colleagues and I contributed to the Oxford Research Encyclopedia of Global Public Health. And the chapter is called Wellbeing and Mental Wellness.
Was it recently that you shared?
Just in the past week or so.
Okay.
And so if we could make sure that all of the students have a copy of that, that really is an overview and quite an in-depth analysis of all of these issues that I've just touched on in the course of an hour.
Okay. Okay, I will definitely circulate it, share it with others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, maybe you can take a few questions from students.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, I have that PDF which you sent, sir. I have forwarded that to my students' WhatsApp group, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jennifer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So from the student side, is there any questions? Kindly put it in a chat box. We can read. From the faculty also.
Maybe everybody's just thinking deeply about it. If no questions, Dr. Jennifer, then we can wrap up, because certainly the three documents I've mentioned, one is the white paper on mental wellness. If you could share a link with the students for that, I can send that to you. The Asian Development Bank book, Wellness for Healthy Asia, and the chapter, Wellbeing and Mental Wellness. That pretty well covers everything. I think if people have got questions, they will be addressed by that material.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So now I request Dr. Alex Joseph, Associate Professor of SPH, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, all. So it's a very pleasure and proud privilege here. I got opportunity to extend the vote of thanks with regard to School of Public Health to our most beloved professor, Dr. Jerry Bodekar. He's a well-wisher of our school, our advisory board member, and a very nice human being. So it has been very interactive session. We could not make it because this mode is online mode, which prevents people from asking questions. So I was noting down few of the points which has excited us, like when you started giving the importance of mental wellness in this COVID era itself. We were thinking, okay, this might be something which in traditional health or systems, but there was and each and every point which you discussed was something for each of us to take further home and think about it. So it is not something as a theory. So it was so nice to hear from your research experience with evidence-based provings that how the small things which we felt it might be important, but we were not really sure how a laughing can help, or how the physical activity, how even the sunlight. So it's not only just an happiness which getting, but there are also mental health benefits, physical health benefits. That was something very interesting. And the regarding the mention regarding gut brain axis, that was something which was again interesting. That thing we would like to also further work on it as a research. So there was something for all of us, as for the students, for the faculty, and of course your words, your wisdom, and the amount of time you have spent with us are really appreciable. I once again extend my sincere thanks to you for again joining with us and giving your continued support in our wellness endeavors. And also I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Padma and Jennifer for organizing such a wonderful event and choosing the right person over here to deliver this lecture. Thank you so much, sir. We are so happy to see you back again, and also look forward for your continued support in our wellness endeavors. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. It's been a pleasure to be with you all, and I look forward to continuing involvement and engagement, which I'm sure Dr. Padma will make sure I do.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Just
much.
1 minute, ma'am. We'll take that photo. 1 minute, ma'am. Sir and ma'am, please.
Maithili ma'am, thank you so much.
Anytime for you all.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Maithili.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskaram.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.